Let's start off with the House of Lords. If the House of Lords kick it back, do you think the timeline for triggering Article 50 is still a valid one?
Yes, I do. I mean, I think the fact that the bill was able to go through the House of Commons totally unamended hugely strengthens the government's hand. Even if the Lords are to pass these amendments, I think they will be overturned in what's known as ping-pong, where you get the bill being sent back by the House of Commons. So I think that's an example of how to understand British politics at the moment is this bigger question of the fact that the government is largely unopposed domestically, which is an extraordinary situation really to be in. I mean, the Labour Party, as we saw in the recent by-election results, really at its weakest for a very, very long time. Theresa May totally dominating the political scene. And so her big problems really are what her European negotiating partners are willing to concede and how the negotiations are going to go. She has not really got any domestic constraints.
How would you, just marks out of 10, expectation management on Brexit from number 10 at this point?
I think that they have moved initially after the referendum and after her early period as Prime Minister. There was a lot of very kind of gung-ho noises. I think they're now in a much better place where they are, explaining that this is going to be difficult. Everybody knows now the early dynamics of the negotiation are going to be, they're going to spend a long time talking about what to talk about before they get onto any substance. And also her speech that she gave a month or so ago now, I think was a very important adjustment to reality. They had been keeping things like the single market open, and that was making them look a little bit hostage to events because that was something not really in their gift. The fact that they've now set a bunch of red lines and goals that are a little bit more achievable, I think gets the UK government in a slightly more comfortable place.
How much do you think that the communication strategy is premised on what the economy is doing? The economy, the data have been good, but starting to show signs that we are seeing evidence of a slowdown. The OBR forecast still looks pretty reasonable, and the consensus still seems to be that actually the UK gets through this reasonably unscathed. But if the data starts to roll over, does the communication strategy necessarily follow on from that?
Look, I think things always get more difficult when the economy is weak for any government. And so there's certainly been a strength factor for the government that the economy has been holding up. It's interesting that you get, I think, some of the more strategic heads in the government, particularly Philip Hammond and the Treasury, warning about risks. So they've really put themselves into a position where they can say, look, we warned this might happen. I think that's always very important for a government. I think that if the economy does weaken, it has quite complicated dynamics on the negotiations because, in a sense, a strong economy allows your European negotiating partners to say, well, clearly we need to go further to demonstrate that there's some pain for the UK, which I think is quite important for the rest of Europe. If the economy weakens, maybe that's less of an imperative. So it's, in the longer term, it's a complex dynamic
Rupert,
in the economy.
Let me ask a delicate question. I was over in the United Kingdom once, and I was amazed at not the animosity, but just the exhaustion of the English people about Scotland. Do the English people want Scotland to stay within the United Kingdom? What's that zeitgeist right now, 10 years on from all this debate?
Yes, I think that on balance, people in England and Wales want to preserve the union. I don't think that it's at the top of their list of priorities, but on balance, they want to preserve the union.
I don't mean any insult here, Guy and Rupert. I think it's a pregnant question that has to be asked. What is that mood, please?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. We've had these interesting developments the last few days, stories again putting the concept of a Scottish referendum back on the agenda. I don't think that's hard news. I don't think it's changed any probabilities, but it's a very useful reminder of the fact that this is hanging over the British political system and probably will do for some time, the threat of another referendum. It's a very, very difficult call for the SNP and Nicola Sturgeon. There are those, the bullish camp say this is our best opportunity to win an independence referendum for a generation, use the Brexit issue as leverage in another referendum. On the other side, actually, in many ways, a referendum is now harder to win than it was a few years ago because the oil price makes the fiscal arithmetic much, much harder. You've got to have a land border with the European Union. You're going to have to commit to join the euro. All those things make it a lot more difficult. So it's really a very high-stakes decision for the SNP.
Thank you for that clinic.